Hello everyone, welcome back to Sports and More with the Madman. Today I'm going to be talking about sports. Now, I created this channel with sports in mind. I grew up loving sports, okay? From the very first time I watched a baseball game when I was about 3 years old, I believe, that I can remember anyway. When I was a kid, like little like that, I would stay up, and I'm from Michigan. I'm a Tigers fan. I would watch the Tigers play late at night, especially if they're on West Coast trips or something. When I was just a little kid, 3 or 4, because my stepfather, he worked, at the time he worked third shift, so kind of like when he went, I kind of got up and, or was already up, and then I, find my sports channel and see if my boys were playing, and if they were, I mean, I was a crazy little kid. I'd get a fly swatter, right, and I'd be taking hacks, acting like that is my baseball bat, a little fly swatter, and yeah, so those are my earliest memories of how I became a sports fan, how I fell in love with sports. I just saw Kirk Gibson running around the bases like a madman, and he would he'd do this thing where he'd like tilt his head back while he's running, and his batting helmet would always go flying off, and he'd go slide into second or whatever base he was taking, head first, no helmet, and it just looked awesome. And I was very fortunate because those Tiger teams that I grew up with had some very, very good and special players, from Kirk Gibson, who I already mentioned, to Lance Parrish, to Alan Trammell, Lou Whitaker. One of my favorites was, and he wasn't a great player by any means, but one of my favorites was Chet Lemon. And I think it was just because I knew what a lemon was, like the fruit, and every time I saw Chet Lemon come up to bat, it just reminded me of the fruit. But he was, like I say, he was kind of a marginal guy, but it was just funny. And of course we had Jack Morris, great pitcher. I just fell in love with sports, and in particular baseball, early, very early. Like I said, 3, 4 years old. Around 6, I fell in love with hockey. My stepfather took me to my first game right around the age of 5 or 6. We had a local team here that was actually pretty good, but it was very entertaining. Like, this was, kind of still old school hockey. There's a lot of skill involved in the game, also, but there's a lot of how can I put it nicely? There was a lot of animosity, and when it boiled over, because I mean, they, I think it was like a 10 or 12 team league, and then it expanded to a much larger league, which eventually it collapsed because they just expanded way too far, and it would just got to be too much. There just was not, whoever ran that league ran it into the ground by expansion. But anyways, yeah, man, see full out, see a lot of fights. Every game there's at least one fight, usually a lot more. I seen bench clearing brawls, legitimate. Everyone off the bench on both sides, backup goalies. I mean, coaches going after each other. And this was all live in person when I was a young kid, and boy, it was exciting. It was very exciting, and so I really grew up loving baseball and hockey, and really didn't have much experience with any other sports until a little later on in life. I want to say around 9. I mean, we always watched the Super Bowl, but it never seemed that interesting. But about 9 years old, I really started watching the Lions, and they weren't that good. And then they got this running back by the name of Barry Sanders. They also got this linebacker in the same draft by the name of Chris Spielman. And I mean, that's when my love of football began. Watching those two guys. Barry's the greatest running back of all time, in my opinion. That's all up for debate. Anytime you mention the greatest of all time, any sport, anything like that, it's all debatable. But I think it's safe to say that Barry Sanders has a lot of support when it comes to being the greatest running back of all time. Sadly, I think he was misused a lot in Detroit, especially taking him out at the goal line, not getting him involved in the passing game. But that stuff in general at that time, the passing game stuff, take him out of the goal line, that was asinine. I have no idea, and never will, why they ever did that to the man. He probably would have had easily another at least 50 more touchdowns to his career total had they left him in. But it also, might have saved him some wear and tear and possibly injury. It's very hard to say. you know, when you go back in time. You know, going back in time, we can all do it and pontificate and have an opinion, but there's pros and cons to everything. And the pro was that he was almost always healthy. Um, that he's the most electric runner, just runner of the football that I've ever seen. The only guy that I've ever seen, even to this day, that I've ever seen that was kind of like him was LaDainian Tomlinson in his prime. That cat reminded me the most of Barry. Not with not necessarily with the way Barry liked to reverse field and stuff, but just he had some juice and some electricity. LT LaDainian Tomlinson did in his prime with the Chargers, and he was the most electric back that I've ever seen since Barry Sanders. And those are the two. Barry's, the most electric back I've ever seen. LaDainian's the second most, and there's some other backs that have been electric, but not on either of their level. But anyways, that's how I fell in love with football. So as far as basketball, I always loved shooting hoops outside. Like we built a hoop, and my neighbor had a hoop, and I could do that for hours. Or I'd go to a park. I loved it. I was horrible. I mean, was not a good shooter, but I just loved it, And I loved watching Michael Jordan. The guy was just, he was incredible. I mean, it's not only the skill, but like, he was just, he was so determined and so wasn't taking any prisoners. Look, we're gonna win this thing, and that's it, man. If you're not on board, whatever, if I have to do it by myself, I will. And look, he took his lumps, right, against my Pistons. It's well documented. Pistons, Bulls. Pistons were very good, great team. The bad boy, first original bad boys. Excuse me, they're very great. They played a very aggressive and unique style, and they weren't going to let people, especially Bill Laimbeer, wasn't going to let people come into the lane without paying for it. And we all know the Dennis Rodman on Scottie Pippen foul that thankfully Scottie didn't get more hurt than he was, because that was a horrible foul. But it was a hard foul in that day, and it just wasn't good. So, but yeah, the Pistons were kind of like once Jordan got past the Pistons and he had Scottie as his as his, I don't know what word I'm looking for here, but you know what I mean. His second guy is his point man, whatever, wingman. Once he found that second person, because until then it was just him, and he is winning games by pretty much just himself. But then when Scottie came along, and then, you know, the likes of Paxson came along, and Kerr, guys who could knock down threes, you know, at a very efficient rate. You know, Horace Grant came up there from Orlando, I believe, and then eventually it all came full circle, and Dennis Rodman wound up playing for and winning multiple championships with Rodman, or with Jordan and Pippen, and that's where my love of basketball come from. You know, the Pistons and the Bulls, but particular player had to be, you know, without a doubt, Michael Jordan. Just phenomenal. But anyways, I made this video today with a purpose. Have you played, or are you playing in a sport right now? Have you ever played professionally? Or are you playing professionally? Have you ever played overseas? Have you ever played in a different country? Please leave a comment. Let me know what your experiences have been like. Excuse me, have been like if you are or have played overseas or in a different country, and what sport you play, all that, and how it's different, and from playing in the, you know, from playing here at home in the U.S., and how it's also the same. Okay, you know, and if you're like me, who played their sports mainly as a youth. I mean, once high school rolled around, my sports playing days, as far as organized sports playing days, were pretty much over. I was cool with that. The only game, I mean, I like playing hockey. I played hockey organized for like 3 years, and it was fun. I had a blast, but I liked it more recreationally than anything. If I could get friends together and we could play hockey, you know, that'd be great. But it's so hard to do because you need ice, and just you know, there's just too many obstacles. And baseball was my true love playing. I really love playing baseball, and I played that from, I want to say, second grade all the way up to 8th grade, and it's one thing. It's not really a regret, but it's one thing I wish, you know, I would have at least tried out for, was JV baseball. I mean, my skills they were all, they were decent. I was technically sound, but I don't know. I you know I know I needed a lot of help to become anything good or great, but it's always something that's kind of stuck with me. Like, doggone, I wish I would have did that, but I didn't do it. So that's where my playing days ended. What about you? Are you currently, like I said, playing in school, JV, middle school, high school, college, professionally? Have you played anything? Or are you just now like me, someone who watches sports and gets their enjoyment out of seeing these younger folks play? And how about how the game? Because every game, no matter what it is, has changed, and change is very hard. Especially, most people don't like change, and I gotta admit, I don't like. I like the change in the NHL as far as them being able to show their skill, but I don't like them taking away the enforcer, the guy that would go out and go fight somebody if they tried messing with one of your team's elite players, like a Sidney Crosby or anything like that. I hate that because we've seen too many great players like Sidney, with the concussions, and other great players in the NHL in particular, just getting run over, trucked, not even seeing the guy that hit him, and getting concussed and all sorts of other injuries, and they pay no price for it. I mean, yeah, the league might suspend them, but on the ice is where they should get their piece of retribution also. That's where the enforcer should still be a part of hockey. Now, Wayne Gretzky's always been against fighting in hockey. Well, you know what, Wayne? If it wasn't for fighting in hockey, you would have got your clock cleaned many, many times. And you probably wouldn't have ever played past season 2 if you didn't have enforcers who stood up for you and didn't let that crap go on. And it boils my blood. Like, how can a guy who was so talented and so good not realize the role that the enforcer, fighter, whatever you want to call him, on his team played for him? Because guys knew, look, if I take a run at Gretzky, I got to deal with whoever, and that's not going to be a good time. So I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to take a run at him, or I might have to deal with multiple people. So that I've never understood. How someone who was so good was always against fighting. It's like, look, you would not have been that good had there been no fighting, or had it been like today. With guys just getting ran and no consequences. other than what the league wants to give them as far as penalty or suspension wise. And then, you know, baseball, we've seen, well, let's see, I've lived through the Colorado Rockies humidor era. I've lived through the obviously the steroid era, and clubs making their new stadiums much smaller as far as dimension wise, and it's much easier to hit home runs in certain parts and in certain parks, in certain parts of certain parks. If you didn't catch that, rewind that, because it'll make sense to you. But yeah, so I mean, every sport has changed. Like I say, now there's no hard fouling. Heck, they hardly call anything. Let's face it, in the NBA. I mean, guys are literally walking up the court with the ball in their hand and then decide to dribble, and it's like, okay, screw it, you know. Why call travel? You know, it's like, what the hell's the rule there for? What are we doing? And then if a guy does get fouled kind of hard, oh, automatically we gotta look at this. Oh my goodness! It's like, you know, they've really taken something from each sport, you know. And it's sad because those things were there in place for a purpose, and not all of it was good. Now, some of it had to be taken out, but at the same time, I think some sports have gone way overboard. NBA in particular becomes so lax that it's almost a joke. And some sports have had to, like the NFL, have had to change rules because just, you know, time has proven out that they had to do this. I mean, not only the concussions and stuff, but just the wear and tear on guys' bodies. Like some guys, they've had multiple surgeries. Some guys have had, almost everything replaced: knees, hips. It's crazy. And what's real crazy about it is you see a guy like Jerry Kramer, who played in in the early days. Like, I'd have to look it up. I'm gonna guess the 40s, 50s, maybe the 60s, but a guy like Jerry Kramer, right? And I don't know. He might have had surgeries or replacements or whatever, but I don't think he has. And I see him every year at Super Bowl media when they do the media row, and the guy's walking around and he's like, I think he's close to 80, if not 80, and he played center, and I believe he might have played more than that on the offensive line, which is not, something you're going to walk away with in today's game. without lasting effects. But this guy seemingly did, right? And maybe he's just one of the lucky ones. I don't know. But I see guys like him and I'm like, man, how can a guy like Jerry Kramer, who played a hard position, tough position where he hits every play, be so spry, and like you see some, horrible stuff about younger guys like in their 40s or so that played, 15, 20 years ago, not 50 years ago, who can't walk stairs and can't, do all sorts of stuff. So, yeah, it's very, it's very sad, but, some rules have made our games better, but some have not. That's all I'm saying. And I want your take, please. Leave it in the comments. Do you think, the NBA's gotten too soft? Do you think these super teams in the NBA are hurting the NBA, helping it? Because personally, I think that they're really hurting the NBA, because if you look at it, you start getting these super teams, okay, and then you got like 2, 3, maybe 4 teams who can legitimately play for a championship. And the last 3 years, 3 or 4 now, we've only seen 2 teams that ever even had a legitimate shot, and that was the Golden State Warriors and Cleveland Cavaliers. So, do you want a league where 2 or 3 or 1 team is almost a lock to get to the championship and probably win it? Or do you want a league like the NFL where, yes, the Patriots have won a lot, but they lost a lot also? So, do you want a league that's like MLB? MLB, it used to be, the Yankees and everyone else, or the Red Sox and the Yankees and everyone else. But now we've seen different teams, Kansas City, Houston, who by drafting and signing good free agents have won championships. And I think that is the way to go. And I really hope the NBA gets on that track, because, I mean, as a Pistons fan, it is boring. The regular season's boring. The playoffs, it's like, yeah, I see my team play one series, but I know that they stink, and if they make it to the playoffs, they'll play one series and then they're done. And then at the end of the once we get to the finals, we know Golden State's gonna be there, and then whoever comes out of the East. So, if you want only 2 teams, NBA, you're doing a great job. But if you want everyone to have a a shot at winning a championship, you gotta stop this super teams crap. You know, I don't like it personally. I think it deludes the game instead of makes it something fun and great to watch on a nightly basis. What are your thoughts about that? Please leave a comment in the section below, a like, and subscribe. Thank you for watching. This is Kevin, aka the Madman. I'm out. God bless.